Making a difference in healthcare requires collaboration between researchers, startup founders, and policymakers. This is what Delta is about, hosting conversations with leaders on the path to serious innovation. Hello everyone, my name is Roupen, and I'm a physician on a journey to meet people who are making a delta in healthcare. Hello everyone, and welcome back to a new episode. My name is Roupen, I'm an oncologist, and I see patients actively, but also I love innovation in healthcare. And today I have a very special guest, Dr. Andre Esteva. He's the co-founder and the CEO of Artera. He has a PhD in electrical engineering from Stanford University, and he has a career that spans leadership roles across companies like Salesforce. Dr. Esteva is a pioneer at leveraging artificial intelligence or AI to make a difference in cancer therapy. And that's why today's podcast is very close to my heart. Under his leadership, Artera developed a groundbreaking predictive tool. It is a prostate cancer test called Artera AI Prostate Test. It's changing the way that we personalize treatment for prostate cancer patients. Every cancer is unique. Cancer is an orphan disease. There are no two cancers alike. So whatever they are doing, it's a groundbreaking change in the way we approach prostate cancer. Thank you so much for being here today. Andre, welcome.
Thank you, Roupen. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Can you share with me a bit about your journey? Like, how did you end up from Stanford to Artera? And especially like your background was like in electrical engineering. And so what's the connection there?
Absolutely. So when I was at Stanford, my PhD was in electrical engineering, but my research was actually in computer science. And specifically, it was in AI and in computer vision. And at the time, and still today, I've always been interested in areas of large-scale societal impact. And of course, healthcare is a great direction to move in if you want to work in large-scale societal impact. So I started in my PhD developing AI models for healthcare. And some of the early work that I did was in applying computer vision for the diagnosis of cancer. Specifically, we were working on skin cancer, as well as other dermatological conditions. And some of the work that I did revolved around building an iPhone app that could take a picture of your skin, in particular the skin lesion, and diagnose it, track it, understand it, and so forth. I ended up publishing several works that became reasonably high profile, but what really got me excited about AI in medicine at the time was trialing an iPhone app at the Stanford Hospital. And at the time, we ended up discovering a melanoma on a patient that their dermatologist had missed. And thanks to the app, we found this melanoma at stage 0, where the survival rate is very high. The melanoma was excised and the patient was fine. Their subsequent follow-up, however, would have been 12 months later, where that stage 0 could have very rapidly progressed. And this was a very fair-skinned individual. So as a PhD student that spent years in a research lab focused on his own work, to see something like that impact a patient was stunning and so transformative for me on a personal front. That led to me building a career really focused on medical AI. And that's when I ended up building companies, and I joined Salesforce as the head of medical AI and eventually spun Artera out of Salesforce jointly with UCSF Oncology. And it's been fantastic.
Gotcha. What are the like so you went to and joined Salesforce. So what lessons you learned there that really helped you to bring it to Artera?
One of the key things that I think Salesforce does really well, which I learned from and brought to Artera, is the focus on values-based entrepreneurship and values-based company building.
Yeah.
When I was at Salesforce, our key values, and there were 4, were front and center of everything that we did. How we hired, how we changed teams, how we set goals. And we had to get really specific. What was it about this product or project that we were working on that directly tied back into Salesforce's values? And the reason that I think it's so effective is because and it's been studied in a number of different works, the power of simple rules. When you have a number of different individuals, part of an organization, following simple rules that are easy to understand, easy to memorize, and easy to make decisions off of, you end up getting a collective intelligence out of everyone. You actually see this in nature really well when you see schools of fish or swarms of birds or ants in an ant mound. They
Hmm.
operate almost as an entity separate from themselves. The collective group
Correct.
operates almost as if it has its own mind, which it doesn't. But what occurs is that the individual follows simple rules that interact with other individuals, and so you get this collective emergent behavior. And that is exactly the same phenomena that occurs with values-based company building. You have everyone at
Hmm.
the company following the same values and specifically the same virtues under those values, and the virtues are simply the actions that you have to take to live the value as the company has defined it. So you have everyone at the company following those actions, those virtues as part of those values. You get really remarkable emergent behavior. And I borrowed this concept in the building of Artera, and it's been tremendous. Artera has 5 values. The first one is patient success. The second one is impact. And so every Arteran knows that at the end of the day, the most important thing is that we drive successful results for patients. That makes it really easy to make decisions. That makes it really easy for someone to understand why they're doing something. Is this going to drive impactful results for the patient or not? You can prioritize, you can triage, and so forth. And we have 3 other values, and every single one of our values has detailed virtues underneath it, which every Artarian knows at heart. And it turns out that that structure works incredibly well at getting emergent behavior to be created out of a company.
I really appreciate sharing that because I think this is not something like lots of guests talk about on the podcast and something I believe in. Now you make me think about 2 books come to my mind. You mentioned that many books are written about this. So I've been recently reading the Hard Thing about the hard things, and which is a great book also like Good to Great. And although they are not healthcare books, but they talk about like management and building organizations, and this is very important. Like the culture of a company, it's very important, and how you make those people, the people who work there, believe in the bigger picture, the bigger value, which I find very tricky. I just want to follow up another question on that. So let's say you're starting a company right now. What are the things like do you have like a to-do list in your mind? Or if someone is listening to now, like what can I do to make these values or make this culture or to spread this culture or spread these values across the organization or the startup or the company, especially it becomes harder as we scale and as we grow. What would you do like if someone like if you're going to start this all over again?
It's very important when you're a founder, an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, that the company feel like an extension of you, especially in
Hmm.
those early days. And it's also really important that how the company operates is contextualized based on what you're doing, the market that you're in, what you're building, and so forth. So the values have to fit the product, the values have to fit the market, they have to fit you. There's this
Yeah.
notion of product market founder fit. Well, my co-founder and I did when we first started Artera, and actually the CEO of Salesforce was the lead investor in our first round, and he also encouraged us to do this, was we sat down and we asked ourselves, what values have made us successful so far in our careers and why? And which ones do we think are the most important that we want to be reflected in Artera? So we each chose 2. We intentionally limited it to 2.
Hmm.
And at the beginning, Artera had 4 values: patient success, impact, perseverance, and team synergy.
Yeah.
Because we really believed in driving impactful results for patients. We knew
Hmm.
we were going to have to persevere and go through some really difficult challenges to get there. This is healthcare after all. And we knew we had to build teams, very cross-functional, heterogeneous teams with very different kinds of expertise, and we had to bring them together. And consequently, these were also values that had defined success in our own careers. So we started with those 4, and then the 5th one, which is efficiency, we added as we saw that the capital markets turned on their heads from the founding of Artera until today. We knew it would be very important to run Artera in the most lean and capital efficient way and maximize the ROI of every last resource invested, whether it's capital or personnel time or anything else. And that has been really, really effective. So from the beginning, Artera felt like an extension of ourselves, and then we contextualized what we did based on a changing environment.
I love it. No, I think that makes sense. And we were talking a lot about Artera, but like for the listeners who don't know what Artera is, how would you tell the listener, like, what is Artera? What do you guys do? And I have a lot to add there, but I want to hear it from you first.
Artera is a company that we founded 3 years ago. It's a medical AI startup. It was incubated for 2 years jointly between Salesforce AI and UCSF Oncology,
Mhm.
and it was spun out at the end of 2021. What we do at Artera is we develop medical AI tests that personalize therapy for cancer patients. These are AIs that we've developed that look at images of patients' tumors and also ingest clinical data about those patients. And together, they'll predict the long-term future of a patient and they'll predict response to therapy. So if you are a clinician and you have a cancer patient in front of you, what we'll do is we'll generate a report for you that prognosticates the patient's long-term outcomes, whether or not the cancer will metastasize, if it'll recur, if the patient will survive, and so forth. And we will also predict response to certain therapies. For instance, if you're considering hormone therapy as a therapy, we will let you know if that patient would respond and so on and so forth.
And this is very important because like prostate cancer, it's every person has a unique type of cancer. And when we start a patient on a treatment, the guideline tells you that like this is the first line treatment, and if the patient fails, this is the second line treatment. If the patient fails, this is we do have lines of treatment, but we don't know when the patient is going to respond. We just give a treatment and we hope they're going to do their best. They're going to respond for a while. And at that point, we waste money for sometimes because treatments won't work for some patients. And also, on top of that, um, the patient is going to develop side effects. And that's why it's very important to develop more tools that are personalized toward any patient. I can tell, like today, I was seeing lots of prostate cancer patients, and we have patients who like progress after like fourth or fifth line treatment. And you never know that patient might respond to the fourth or fifth line, but like he would have be done better like if we did like because after you pass the first line you have several options when it comes to second and third line, so it's very hard for an oncologist to choose which drug should I choose. So it's just like we throw one thing in the sink, and if it sticks, it sticks. It doesn't stick, we're going to move on to the next one. And that's why it's very, very important. And the other thing is like we have tons of data in pathology slides and in the CT scans that the human eye can't see. The way that the cells are like stacked next to each other, the way that the nucleus it looks, the pathologist eye can't see. And that's why we need AI to look at those images and extract features and extract things that we can't see, but the AI will see and tell us which patient is going to do best according with which treatment based on historical data. And that's why I really love what you guys are saying, because like this is another jump forward toward personalized medicine. Like this is what you guys are doing. It's important. Like also it's in the guidelines now. If you search NCCN guidelines, prostate cancer, Artera is just going to pop up there. So whatever you are doing, it's being accepted by the scientific community that it has merit. It changes patients' life. And that's why I was very, very excited to have you today on the show.
Thank you, Ruben. And that's exactly right. You know, when it comes to therapy personalization, it is really, really difficult for any human to predict if a patient's 10 to 15-year future is going to be different on one therapy or another, because it's just not something that humans are naturally good at. But it turns out AI is incredible at this. Because what AI can do
Yeah.
is it can look at long-term data and be trained on long-term data. It can look at patient images at baseline. It can consider the therapies that they're put on and then map that to the long-term outcomes. One of the things that we've done really effectively at Artera is we validate all of our tools on long-term phase 3 clinical trials. We have validated at this point on somewhere between 10 and 20 different phase 3 clinical trials, landmark trials that have been instrumental in determining key decisions that are still standard of care and practiced widely today in the United States and abroad. That's been a key reason why we've been listed in the NCCN guidelines with level 1 evidence as the only predictive test and more endpoints than anyone else is because of that incredibly rigorous validation. AI is just really, really strong at this. It can ingest this kind of data and predict with remarkably high fidelity what's going to happen to one patient on one therapy or another in the long term.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things I hear a lot about from people who are trying to innovate in this space is like it's very hard. And I hear repeatedly that one of the major lessons that they learned from innovating in healthcare is being patient, because like it takes so much time to, and you guys within 3 years you achieved a lot. Being on the guidelines within 3 years, like it's not easy. So I just want to extract some lessons from your experience. Like, what challenges did you face when you started like Artera and putting this team together and developing the algorithms and getting the data? That's one of the biggest hurdles. Difficult. It's very difficult to get data in healthcare. So can you walk me through like the phases and the challenges in each phase and how we were able to overcome them?
You bet. So I actually started a company in healthcare before Artera. Artera is my fourth company. It's my second health tech company. I learned a lot of hard
Okay.
lessons in the first one. And in the first one, I was actually trying to commercialize the work that I alluded to earlier, where we had built an app that could diagnose skin ailments as accurately as dermatologists. And there's a series of things that a company that wants to innovate in medical AI, especially,
Hmm.
needs to check. Two of the most important ones, probably the only two that really, really matter at the end of the day, are one, workflow integration,
Yeah,
and two, how are you going to get paid?
I love
Embedded
it.
within each of those are a series of other kind of sub questions. But when it comes to, let's say,
Yeah.
workflow integration, you need to make sure that you're baked in a routine workflow in a way that is easy for the clinician, in a way that in which the clinician trusts you. You need to make sure you're
Hmm.
solving a problem that clinicians actually care about, and so on and so forth. So you
Yeah.
need that workflow integration. And it's got to be pulled by the clinician. They need to trust your tool, they need to understand your tool, they have to want your tool. And then the second point that's really important is you need to get paid. You need to figure out a way to monetize your system, either by having a stakeholder pay for it or by having it covered by insurance. And with Artera, we chose the latter. We found a route that works. And it's now been fantastic because it's a paid tool. The workflow integration is seamless. And as a result, we've seen tremendous adoption.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think those two things are very, very important. It's like because lots of companies I see, they bring a product or a software which just going to add another login step to the physician during the day, or another app they have to open, or another software. It's just like you mentioned. That is so right. Especially like during the day, it's people don't can't imagine. Like sometimes my wife texts me and I will be at work, and then like I might not be able to literally to answer her for several hours. Now she's used to it. She knows like how, but in the beginning, he's like, where are you for several hours? Like literally, it's so hard sometimes even to text on the phone, especially when you are in the clinic and be between rooms, you have to go through patients, and this patient is late and that. So it's very, very, very important to fit in the physician workflow. And I agree with you. It's like, who has my money in healthcare? That's very important. Your user is not your payer, and your payer is not your user. Those are two different things. And I completely agree with you. So when it comes to Artera, I assume now it's since the NCCN guidelines it's covered by insurance, right?
That's right. Artera
Yeah,
is paid for by Medicare.
I love it. Um, so you have some interesting stories about one of your lead investors. I was looking into your LinkedIn profile, and like you had very interesting. Tell me a bit about it. How were you able to secure your first investment when it comes to Artera? Like, because I have a lesson, I extracted a lesson from there, but tell me about it.
Well, since Artera was incubated for 2 years, jointly between Salesforce and UCSF, we actually had the great privilege of having Marc Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, lead our first round as we spun out of Salesforce. And the way it occurred was, my at the time research collaborator and now co-founder Felix, he and I had spent 2 years working at this intersection of
Hmm.
AI for oncology with a focus on prostate cancer. And after about 2 years, we had all these great results in which we had demonstrated that we could prognosticate outcomes accurately. And the first incarnation of what's now one of our predictive tools that can identify if patients would benefit from hormone therapy as an adjuvant to evasive radiation. We had been developed, and we took this data to Mark, and we said, "Hey, Mark, we have all these results. What do you think we should do with them?" And he said, guys, this is one of the greatest advances, if not the greatest advance I've seen in prostate oncology. So we took all these results to Marc Benioff and we asked him what he thought. And he looked at us and said, guys, this is the most exciting advance I've seen in prostate oncology in the last 20 years. And I should know because I fund a lot of it. I think you should start a company and I'd like to back it. And so that's exactly what we did. We started a company to commercialize what we'd been working on for several years at that point. And Mark funded it. He was our lead investor in our seed round, and it's just been thrilling since. We've grown a really delightful company that's impacting many patients now all across the United States and internationally.
Yeah, I think there are huge um, things to learn from the story. There are many great things to learn, and thank you for sharing that. I wanted to highlight it. Think so first, it's like so many startups start the other way around. Many startups come with a product and then try to sell it to hospitals, and then once they sell it to hospitals, they do research about it, and then try to commercialize it. But you did it well. I think you did it the right way, or I believe that you did it the right way because like you had the data, you had the research before doing anything. And that made raising money so easy when compared to other startups who try to do things other way around. So that was like the lesson that it was really great. I wanted to highlight like you had the research, you had the data, you showed that this worked. And then the other great lesson from you is, you have an amazing background, you have incredible background, and like lots of researchers, they have the data and they don't know how to commercialize it. So I think that's something else that you were able to, or actually you figured out in the past. Let's say I'm a researcher, I have data, and I think I have a tool or an algorithm that makes a difference. What advice would you give me to bring this or to commercialize uh, my test or my research? Like, what should I do first?
You need a really clear clinical vision that's
Mm-hmm.
supported by clinicians. If
Mm-hmm.
they are your end user, whoever your end user is, you need to make sure that they're bought in, that
Mm-hmm.
they like what you're building, that they would use what you're building, and potentially if that they would pay for what you're building.
Mm-hmm.
Set in startup lingo, you need to make sure you have product market fit even before you build the product.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, I have a story around this. In my first company, we had already created the company and we spent several years doing research to develop the tool and so forth. And only at that point did we actually bother going out there and speaking to clinicians about what they thought about the tool. And to be
Mm-hmm.
fair, we had worked with clinicians, but from the perspective of research, not necessarily from the perspective of here's a tool, would you want to use it? And
Yeah.
what we found was that it was going to be a real struggle to commercialize what we were proposing to build. It was a very great lesson to learn before you raise a bunch of money and spend years building a product. And it's also a very lightweight exercise to verify
Can
that
I
you have
ask like why it was hard to like commercialize it? Like what were the challenges there?
the challenges with the first company that I built was around, and this was the app for dermatology.
Mm-hmm.
It lacked a good mechanism to get paid, and it lacked
Okay.
workflow integration.
Gotcha. The two most important things.
Exactly. The workflow integration simply wasn't there. Clinicians don't pull out their phones and use them in clinic, and it wasn't exactly the kind of tool that you could prescribe to a patient.
Yeah.
And getting this covered by insurance was going to be a nightmare. We went to speak to insurance companies, and we realized that this was just it wasn't going to work out. So
Can I
the
ask? Sorry, go ahead. I have a follow-up question there, but like, sorry, go ahead.
oh no, I was saying that the two key things weren't there.
So, so the first company versus Artera now, you found a way to make the insurance pay for it. So, what would you say? Why in the first time the insurance did not pay, despite that you were helping physicians, and why this time the insurance is paying? What is the key there?
Well, so today we are reimbursed because there are companies in our space that were reimbursed before us. That made a
Hmm.
huge. They used a different technology and it was a different everything, but the use case was similar enough where we could speak to insurance and say, you're already doing X. We are very similar to X. So let's have a conversation. And we
Gotcha.
provide value, and here's our evidence, and so forth. And in the first company that didn't exist, and more importantly, without that workflow integration piece, without the pull from the clinicians, there wasn't going to be enough volume and interest to convince insurance companies to pay for it.
I just also have a thought. I'm happy to hear yours. That is it maybe because in the first time you were not able to show that there is a change in the patient outcome versus Artera, you can show you might change the patient trajectory. Was that also a reason or contributing reason in your opinion?
I absolutely think that that was a contributing reason. And the insurance companies that we spoke with
Yeah,
requested that we tie this back into outcomes. They wanted to
gotcha.
know if this was going to change management. They wanted to know if ultimately they were going to, let's say, save on costs in treatment if they could, diagnose skin ailments from an app. Whereas in the case of Artera, it's really clear if you can personalize therapy, there's an immediate cost savings to therapy decrease, and there's a long-term cost savings to less side effects from treatment.
I love it. Yeah, I think we highlighted these are the points that I think I thought before we met that really contributed because like relatively speaking, what you guys achieved in very short time, it's impressive. And I was thinking like before we met, like, okay, so what are the factors? And I thought like this could be contributing factors, but after hearing it from you, no, I'm very happy to hear that directly from you. I think that brings me to the end. Thank you so much for being here today. Do you have any last words for like people who are trying to innovate in this space, whether they are researchers or whether they are tech entrepreneurs and trying to innovate? Like, what would you tell them? Like, if you have a message for them?
I would say this is one of the most rewarding spaces in which you can innovate. It is an outstanding confluence of need and technology. AI has ripened so much in the last 1 to 2 decades, really in the last 12 years, 13 years. And what we can do today is just remarkable. And the rate of progress is equally remarkable.
Yeah,
Healthcare needs a lot of these tools. Now, there's a lot of good that you can do for society by building the right tools for healthcare, and you can do well by doing good. It's a challenge, so you need to persevere through it. You need to find the right team. You need to make sure that you're not building a hammer in search of a nail, that you actually find a problem first and then build a tool to solve that specific problem. I mean, there's a series of other hurdles beyond it, but if you can get past it, knowing that we're helping so many patients has been the highlight of my career.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that day, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ruben. It's been a pleasure.